Hello, Assalamu alaikum. This is the last video lecture on the firearms and its mechanics. And in this lecture, we'll discuss the blast injuries, as blast injuries are also called a special type of trauma. So we will discuss these mechanics which are involved in the blast injuries. In this lecture, we'll try to understand what are the basic designs of a bomb and which is the principle involved in its causation and its effects which it produces. Then what do we mean by the peak pressure? The positive pressure and the negative pressure waves which are created at the place of the blast. Then what are the effects of the blast? And these effects are the primary effects, secondary effects, tertiary, and other effects. Then we will discuss the wounding elements in a bomb, which are responsible for causing injuries to the victims. These are blast waves, the shock waves, the fragmentations, which are placed within the bomb, or other fragmentation which are created by the objects nearby, which gets energized and starts traveling with the speed of the fragments. Then fire and heat effects, that the fire within the blast and fire outside the objects which are inflammable and gets flamed. Then the blast wind, this is also important, which produce its effects. Then in the end, we'll discuss the autopsy examination, because autopsy examination is very, very important, because the bodies usually are extensively mutilated. There is mixing of body parts, commingling, and so disfigured and identity is difficult. So conforming of body parts into one body and identity and all other medical legal aspects which are in the autopsy examination, they are important in this blast injuries. Okay, we'll start with the lecture. Take care. Hello, everyone. We're now starting with the last lecture of the firearms and in mechanics. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. That is the lecture 11. This is about the blast injuries. As blast injuries, they are also called as special trauma, because the mechanics involved in blast injuries are such a tremendous that they involve all the types of injury. There are burns, there are laceration, cuts, fractures. So the blast injuries are specially discussed in continuation with the lectures on the firearms. So the learning objectives of this lecture will be that by the end of this video lecture, the students will be familiar with the mechanics which are involved in the bomb blast and mechanics of the blast injuries. And we'll discuss in this lecture the basic design of the bomb, and which is the principle involved in the designing of a bomb. And what do we mean by peak pressure, and what is meant by positive and negative pressure waves, and what are the effects of the blast, that is the primary effects, secondary, tertiary, and other effects. What are the wounding elements in a bomb, and the blast waves, shock waves, fragmentation, fire, heat, and the blast wind. Then the most important is the autopsy examination, because the bodies are extensively mutilated and fragmented, and there is mixing of the body parts, commingling. So we have to identify each and every part, conform into various bodies and identify them. So the blast injuries are basically injuries which is a special form of trauma resulting from explosion, commonly by the bomb blast. Basic design of the bomb is that it has got main three components: the explosive material, it may be solid, liquid, or gas, and the container in which all the ingredients are contained. And this may be of plastic, glass, or any other material. Then the detonating device. This may be time delayed or remote controlled device. The principle in the designing of the bomb is that the detonated explosive material releases energy of high magnitude in the form of hot expanding gases. And it raises the atmospheric pressure in the region of explosion instantaneously, generating pressure waves. And these pressure waves travel concentrically all around, that is circumferentially, all directions at a high speed that may exceed up to 21,000 kilometers per hour, such a high speed. And this is a graph representing this is the shock front, and this is the highest peak pressure. And this area is the high pressure area, and this is normal atmospheric pressure. And there is also a low pressure area. After the wind has been traveled circumferentially, there is a low pressure area. So the peak pressure, or the time for which the high pressure area is developed, that is mainly responsible for the wounding element. So the peak pressure is the pressure which is very high and is the front of the wave, and the maximum difference between the region of explosion and the atmospheric pressure is known as peak pressure. So difference of normal atmospheric pressure to the highest maximum pressure which attains an explosive explosion, that is called as peak pressure. And it is measured in pound per square inch. And then there is a partial vacuum which is formed behind these pressure waves. The atmospheric pressure becomes below normal when circumferentially the peak pressure waves have been moved out. The area immediately following is the low pressure area, a partial vacuum. The time between the shock waves and the return to normal atmospheric pressure is called the positive pressure duration. That means for how long the high pressure has been maintained. After the positive pressure wave has been moved forward, following that is an area of negative pressure or vacuum, which will have a suck-in effect. This negative pressure area will suck in the objects which are in the surrounding or in the vicinity. So what are the effects of the blast? The explosion produces flame of very short duration, and there are solid fragments which are traveling circumferentially. So the total effect of the blast is because of the conversion of the bomb and its surrounding into a violently expanding cloud of hot gases, flame, and solid fragments. So you can imagine that highly expanding cloud of hot gases, flame, and solid fragments, which is responsible for damage. So the factor influence the outcome. They are the physical characteristics of the bomb. That is what are the ingredients, what are the structure, container. So all the physical characteristics in the bomb. Then the distance between the bomb and the victim, and protection effect of adjacent structures. The blast elements which are responsible to cause injuries, they appear in the following manner. There are primary effects of the blast directly, then secondary effects, tertiary effects, and other effects. We'll discuss these one by one. The primary effects are basically due to direct impact of pressure wave front, which is traveling at a very high speed. And these pressure waves can be reflected from the edges or the corners of the building, and they can change the direction, and they can change the lateral flow around the barriers. So these high velocity pressure wave front, which is traveling with very high speed, circumferentially travels all around, and from the edge of the buildings or the corners of the building, they are reflected to another direction. And these reflective waves then join and reinforce the original waves. Then it further enhances the damage. So these blast wave causes injury in a similar fashion that are caused by blunt weapon. That means there will be lacerations, there will be contusion, there will be fractures. All the blunt weapon injuries will be elicited on the victim. Then the secondary effects, they are indirect damage in the form of injury which are received due to impact of debris. All the objects which are in the vicinity, they get energized and they start traveling with the same speed as those of the pressure waves. And they strike these debris, they strike and produce the secondary effects. The debris consists of the primary missiles originating from the components of the bomb and the secondary missiles. And the secondary missiles are the surrounding articles thrown into flight by the blast, which may be stone, pebbles, or any other material. Then the tertiary effects are indirect injuries caused by the victim by striking against a wall or other barriers under the effect of pressure waves. The persons, they are thrown away by the pressure effect and they strike to the walls or other hard objects and produce tertiary damage. Then other effects to the victim are due to the explosion in the form of flame because there is burning, hot gases due to combustion of the clothes or any surrounding burning. So, and injuries may also be because of the falling of the building, the debris and the masonry structure, they fall on the victims and they get crushed. So these are the other effects which can occur by the falling building. Then the wounding elements in the blast which are responsible for causation of injury, the most important is the blast wave. When a bomb explodes, the area around the explosion becomes overpressurized, resulting in highly compressed air and that travels faster than the sound speed. And this wave will dissipate over time, and distance will exist only a matter of milliseconds. So this high pressure wave, which is the blast wave, it the initial blast wave inflicts the most damage. When this blast wave reaches a structure or a person, this forces the blast will cause primary and the initial impact by the shock waves. And this will damage a structure or a body on impact. So the primary or the initial impact is by the blast wave, which causes damage to the victims. Currently, there are no effective ways to prevent these shock waves from passing through the protective clothing. And in some cases, protective measures may even amplify the destructive effects. So, this is important that no effective means have been devised up till now to protect from these high pressure waves. And the protective clothing, if devised, it can amplify the damaging effects. Then the shock waves. After a blast wave strikes a surface or a body, high velocity shock waves or stress waves will continue to pass through the body, through the human body, and they will travel through the organs and the tissues, and these organs and tissues they get energized, and they also starts traveling in the direction of the shock waves, and the organs may be amputated from their attachment. We have seen bodies in various bomb blasts that externally the body is intact, but internally all the organs have been amputated from their attachments, and the whole body has been converted into an amalgam interiorly. So the shock waves carry energy through the medium they pass through. They are supersonic and transport more energy than sound waves. Currently, there are no effective ways to prevent the shock wave from passing through the body. So, if the protective clothing is measured, they can enhance the destruction instead of protection. Then the fragmentation. The When the bomb explodes, the bomb casing as well as the additional sharpeners which are contained within the bomb, like nails, screws, ball bearings, or any other items included in the bomb, they will be violently thrown outwards away from the explosion. So each particle is traveling at tremendously high speed circumferentially and is damaging wherever it comes into contact. So when these fragments strike buildings, concrete, masonry, glass, or even people, they may fragment even further and cause im- im- tremendous damage to the place where they strike. And these are known as secondary fragmentation. Initially, fragment is traveling, it strikes object and further breaks up into secondary fragments. Then fire and the heat. The explosion may also create a fireball and high temperature, which will result in burns on the human body and even cause secondary fires or explosion in the vicinity, depending upon whether any other fuel source or flammable material is present in the vicinity. That may also be flamed and may catch fire near the blast. So this will also increase the amount of damage. Then the blast wind. After the explosion site, a vacuum is created. When the peak front has been moved forward, immediately behind there is a vacuum or negative pressure which is created, and it is created by the rapid forward movement of the peak front. And this vacuum will almost immediately refill itself within this surrounding atmosphere. So all the debris, all the objects which are present, they will be sucked in. And these objects, they will be gathering in the place of the explosion and they will cause further damage. They will be sucked in and striking everything which is present in that location. And this creates a very strong pull on any nearby person or structure surface after the initial push effect of the blast has been delivered. So a positive and negative pressure, a sludge hammer type effect, that compression and decompression. So these are two factors, the compression by the pressure wave and decompression by the negative wave. They are responsible most of the damage. The negative pressure sucks in every debris, every object which is present in the material and it strikes at the location. As this void is refilled, this vacuum is refilled, it creates a high intensity wind that causes fragmented objects, glass, and other debris to be drawn back in towards the source of explosion because this vacuum sucks in. So everything which is present in the vicinity that will be sucked in. Now, which we are concerned, that is the autopsy examination. The bodies received after the explosion, they are extensively mutilated, fragmented. Even the body parts have been amputated, they are mixed up. There is commingling, that is the mixing of the body parts. So autopsy examination should be carried out very discreetly, finely, and a team of work, team of people, forensic odontologists, forensic anatomists, pathologists, all the team should be there which should perform the autopsy, and main objective is to find out the identity, to identify the individual, to conform the parts into one body which they belong. So this is the most important issue in the autopsy examination. The autopsy examination of the victims of explosion is very important regarding, not only regarding the cause of death, but regarding identity. Because in most of the situation, the bodies are extensively mutilated. They are fragmented and there is commingling, that is the mixing of body parts. So very important examination regarding forensic point of view, the victims of the bomb blast, the autopsy should be carefully carried out with a teamwork. So every blast or every firearm, you may have been conducted so many cases, even the 1,000 cases if you are conducted professionally, but every case is a mystery and there is a new learning in each case. So that's all about the topic of the firearms and its mechanics and the blast injuries. So this was the last lecture for the students and the young doctors regarding firearms and the blast injuries. So in this lecture, we have discussed the bomb blast and its mechanics. And we are now able to understand what is the basic design of the bomb, what is the principle involved in the construction, and what is meant by peak pressure, and what we mean by positive and negative pressure, and what are the effects of the blast, which may be the primary, secondary, tertiary, and other effects. So what are the wounding elements in a bomb? The blast wave, shock wave, fragmentation, fire heat, and blast wind are the main elements which are responsible for injuries. So we have discussed and understood now how it happens. Then we have discussed the autopsy examination because it is very difficult and different time of examination because the bodies are extensively mutilated, damaged, fragmented, and identification of uh, bodies is important. mixing of body parts, and there we have to isolate them. So that's all for today. Thank you very much. Take care and Allah Hafiz.